Tonganaya outside of Demico, the western pavement of Demico, and they are of course performing some cultural tunes Saturday morning.
Beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Together, my comrades, we will build a brand new Guyana, a country where all are equal opportunity. So let us begin now to show loyalty to Guyana by showing love and respect for all Guyanese. My brothers, my sisters, we will live and die here together. On one to one people, one nation, one destiny. For harmonious living, cooperation will be forever. In work and play as we live as proud Guyanese. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Well, it's time we said all the rich lands in the interior. Our natural resources are there in great quantity. And we will do farming and establish jobs by the border. We'll grow more food so we would fill all Guyanese. My greatest desire is to serve my country, Guyana, and sincerely help my Guyana to move along. Our government asks us that we study hard and we learn the things that will help Guyana to become strong. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. To help develop Guyana the free.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. I know what you gonna even money, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. You can keep your conniving money when you've been a corrupt bum. In a biz there'll be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a biz there'll be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker, neighbor, neighbor, joker, neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
Yes, we, as we said, we've been trying to go through the budget and to see what they are proposing in there. Yesterday, of course, we speculated that they would not be We seem to be getting some technical difficulties, some connection, internet connection difficulties. Let's hope that we get that worked out as quickly as possible. In the meantime, please share the link and let everyone know that Politics 101 is on. As I said, we're going to take an initial look at the budget. We speculated yesterday that there would not be very much in the budget for ordinary working people, and we seem to have been proven correct. But we will let the economists tell us whether we are correct or not. We, of course, have dubbed the budget an anti-working class budget. There's nothing in there. A slight raise in the income tax threshold, $3,000 for old age pensioners, and so on and so forth. We see some big money going to pet projects of the PPP and so on. What's new? Some of you may be asking, and some of you may be disappointed in the sense that you would have expected that given the situation, given the fact that working people are catching hell as a result of the high cost of living, as a result of the pandemic and so forth, that there would have been much more in the budget for them. But we seem to have been disappointed. So here we go. I want to welcome Mr. Elson Lowe, who was on the program before, young economist, worked at the State Asset Recovery Unit that was closed down by the PPP as soon as they came into office. And of course, a member of the People's National Congress, and he worked in the office of the leader of the opposition, perhaps still work there. Elson Lowe, good evening and welcome to Politics 101.
Good evening, good evening. Glad as always, always glad to be on, and glad to kind of really dive into this budget today. As you can see, I wore my red tie because I thought that might have been appropriate given what we're going to talk about today.
Oh yes. So what? When you looked at the budget, I know you economists like to take time to go through very, very carefully what's there. But given the way in which news and information moves today, you are called upon to make some instant reaction. Your first look, your first reading, your first listening to the budget, what is your initial reaction?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the first thing I would say is this. The size of the budget, in terms of the leap, in terms of the size relative to last year, I think has raised some questions for economists, and I think will really raise the inflation question over the course of the year. Just to give your viewers a little bit of context, over the last 10 years or so, Guyanese budgets have expanded basically 10 to 15% annually, give or take here and there. This is an expansion of 4 to 4%. So it's triple the highest rates of expansion we would normally see. And that is concerning. And the reason that they've expanded it so quickly is that they've included all of the oil revenues. They've spent every last dollar or they intend to spend every last dollar of what is in the natural resources fund, which as far as saving for future generations raises some questions. But that aside, we're now looking at a very large budget. Okay, let's say that we intend to spend substantial funds. The question then becomes, what are our spending priorities? How is the budget structured so that we can get a sense of what the national development priorities are, what the near-term priorities are? And I think the further that you poke into the budget, the more concerning it gets. So we're starting off from a position where the budget is incredibly large, and as a result, it may force prices up over the course of the year. And then when you look at the individual things within the budget, there are several that raise some serious issues, and we can go into them and chat a bit. But one of the things that there's a couple of things that pop out. One is the tax threshold. That is not an appropriate change in the tax threshold. I'd also say that the funding for the University of Guyana, the very limited funding, that is also a serious issue of concern. I think you're seeing again funds for Gaisuko. And one of the things I think your viewers need to keep in mind is that Gaisuko has cut its production target by about 32%, so about a third. Now, the question then is Gaisuko going to let go of a third of its staff or cut its salaries by a third since they're producing a third less sugar? But you're seeing again funds in the budget for Gaisuko that are substantial funds. So those are a few areas that jump out initially, but there are a couple other things like the monies that are put aside for small businesses that are not substantial. And one of the things I want to do tonight is to draw a bit of a contrast between what the PNC has put out recently and the AFC as well, some of their ideas, and what we're seeing in this budget, to give viewers a sense, of where these different priorities lie and what the real differences between the two sides are.
Thank you for those introductory remarks. Let me ask you another general question. Is it correct to say that this, to characterize this budget as an anti-working class budget? Am I out of order in making that sweeping characterization?
No, I completely agree with you, and I'll be specific as to why. We're seeing a budget now that is, in excess of 40% larger than the last budget. When we're looking at the income tax threshold as an example, that is a very small change in the threshold. Basically, the smallest change that they could have put out, essentially that they could have put out, which will result in only $2,800, $2,800 a month of additional income, for those in the at the lowest levels of the income bracket, working people who are at the lowest levels. And so that is a minuscule amount given that the budget is larger. Now, there's a difference between, a budget that is small and, these types of small movements, and a budget that is large and these types of small movements. What it means is that these things have been deprioritized. There's less focus on, putting direct income into the hands of those at the lower end of the scale. And that is indeed concerning. What the budget instead emphasizes is a lot of tax exemptions and so on for things like transportation and so on, with the intention of bringing down costs that way. However, some of those policies were put forward last year, and those policies were not particularly effective at bringing down prices, as we saw persistent very high inflation. So it's kind of a more of the same trickle-down economics type of approach, which in this particular context, I think is wholly inappropriate. And one of the things I also want your viewers to kind of get a sense of is this. A lot of this inflation we hear, it's coming from the COVID pandemic. It's, there's nothing they can do about it. This is in many ways false. A lot of the inflation that you're seeing is because of the effect of the oil and gas industry on the broader economy. And as a result, there's a lot of targeted things that need to be done in order to combat the inflation. A more specific example is when you look at what's going on with fish, where fish, people are complaining the price of fish has doubled. Fishermen are saying that they have not been able to catch in the usual areas that they would, so their yields are much lower. They're not catching as many fish. So if you don't have any supply, the price has to go up. That's the way that economics would indicate it. And as a result, we're going to see high prices for fish persist unless those core issues are addressed. And that's something that the PPP has been very unwilling to address, because I suppose they don't want to engage in pressing Exxon to create an accommodation for the fisher folk. So, I see, I think, in excess of $700 million for fishing and so on in the budget. However, that to me does not address the core cause, the core issue behind why the prices are higher. And as a result of that, I asked myself, what is the purpose of this $700 million when this is a very fixable problem that you've chosen to ignore?
What I'm hearing from you, and you can correct me here, what I seem to be hearing from you is that, look, the government gives the impression that it has tackled some of the issues that would be of interest and benefit to the ordinary people, the working people of the country. But basically scratches the surface rather than dealing in a fundamental way and really dealing with the issue in a way that would benefit the people. Am I correct in that conclusion?
Yes, I 100% agree, and I think the real contrast between the opposition parties and the PPP right now is the idea that you can combat this inflation purely by trying to work with businesses and give them tax breaks and incentives, rather than a focus on ensuring that on the bottom rungs we have more resources going there. And I think that's where there's fundamental disagreement. I think that's where the PPP is fundamentally wrong. And what I would like to point out is that we as economists know that the people who suffer the most when prices are going higher and higher are poor people who can't find other ways to raise income to keep up with the price increases. And so, unfortunately, I am expecting high inflation. I've spoken with other economists who are expecting prices to keep going up. And, it's going to be really difficult for those at the bottom.
So there is more investment, or there is continued investment in businesses, especially large businesses, and not a concomitant investment in the people at the bottom. That's a safe conclusion.
I think one of the clear ways to understand what is going on in Guyana is that Guyana is growing quickly, but inequality in Guyana is growing more quickly. And that's why we're seeing people really start to cry out. Some of this is, of course, due to the pandemic causing, unfortunate circumstances. But it is not satisfactory to say that all of it is as a result of it. And the budget really has not tackled the core issues. Another area you could point to is rent. I was pointing out to previously that I saw renting for $80,000 a room where the toilet is right next to the bed, and somebody pointed out that that's how it is in jail, and that's somebody's entire salary, and you're basically just getting a something there that is pretty unacceptable, or at least to most people would be unacceptable, I think. And so that is unfortunately the direction things are headed, because the oil and gas industry is really sending the value of property up, sending up rents in the country. And we're not really appropriately tackling these types of things. So I'm sure they'll make some measures to build a couple homes here and there, but the question is whether they're keeping pace with the demand. And unfortunately, it seems that is not the case, because otherwise you wouldn't be seeing absurdities like that. And that's not the only instance. I can name 2 other instances of absurd rents being charged around Georgetown.
Yeah. No. If someone looks. An innocent person looks at what the minister is saying. He's saying that, look, they're projecting 47.5% growth in 2022. And you seem to be saying a lot of these numbers are misleading. And what is misleading about that projection? What's beneath that? How is that big growth that is projected? How does that translate into development, or not translate into development in the next year?
Well, I give you something specific here. Now, if the country is going to be growing by 4%, right? I think the way that you'd like to optimistically think about it is that you'll be 4% better, or your income will be 4% higher. But we just pointed, regarding the tax threshold, to a situation where someone who is making $65,000, right, or $75,000 in that range, is only going to be taking home an additional $2,800. And as far as I can tell, that is not 44% of $65,000. So when I say that inequality is growing, someone who owns property, typically real estate, rises at a similar rate to the overall economy. So there are people whose houses have doubled and will shortly triple in value in Guyana. So they're making millions upon millions of dollars. But if you are a man who's just, relying on your labor, how much has your income actually increased? $2,800 under this budget, next to nothing. So that's why I'm saying that inequality is growing much faster than the overall economy. This gap is starting to be very concerning. And, this $2,800 is not going to stretch very far. On the PNC side, we have advocated for the tax threshold to be raised all the way up to $125,000, which would mean that you'd have an additional $17,400, I believe, every month in your pocket. Now, that is more than 6 times as much money in the pocket of those at the lower end of the income scale than the PPP is proposing. So it's a radically different number. It will have a radically different impact. And if you look at minimum wage, if you look at the rate of inflation, our proposal will handsomely help people to deal with inflation, whereas the PPP's proposal is woefully anemic and will not allow people to keep pace with the increased costs. It is definitely a budget that is leaving people at the lower end of the scale in terms of income behind. And it's very uncaring in that regard, because ultimately, when we all heard that we were going to get oil, the belief is that we're all going to be doing better. It is not acceptable that some people are doing better and the most vulnerable people are the ones who are being left behind.
Let me press you on that, because they're raising it to 75,000, right? And your proposal says 125,000. The question one would ask: what would you rearrange, or what would you do differently in the budget to accommodate the raise of the threshold to $125,000?
Well, I'll give you something specific. It's been indicated that about $6 billion is the cost or the foregone revenue of some of the tax measures regarding freight and transport into the country for things to be imported. Now, we have not seen prices in the market fall, despite the fact that we've got this incentive. Last year, this incentive was in place that was supposed to facilitate the lowering of prices. We had roaring inflation throughout the year. We have had 1 or 2 items that were stable or down a little bit, like clothing, but overall, it was very difficult. Now, that $6 billion, that's a big chunk of money. Right now, it's 1.3 billion is the cost, the foregone revenue of them raising this threshold from 65 to 75,000. Now, what we're seeing is you raise it up to $125,000, and we're saying this $6 billion that you're not collecting, collect the $6 billion, right, and reallocate that towards raising the threshold. Right, that is a substantial amount of money that has not really shown the impact that you were looking for, or at least that you indicated that you were looking for. And as a result of that, it would be better allocated towards those at the lower end of the income scale. And so that's one of the key ways that we're looking at these issues. One of the other things that's been brought up by the PNC is something that I've advocated for a while, and I'm glad that we're hearing it now, is that the earned income tax credit should be introduced. That would cost, to start off about 700 million, but you would expand it. That would allow people who are working, who are just above minimum wage or just in the lower end of the scale, to benefit substantially, because as you work, you get a top up from the government. So you have to work, but you get an additional top up from the government to help to ensure that you're above whatever poverty line it is that we're looking at. And so those types of programs that put cash directly in the hands of people, not just a one-off, but over a substantial period of time, really help you to change your overall income posture. Those are the ones that we are advocating. And it's something, something subtle is also missing in this discussion, which is that when you get a cash grant, that's something you can use today and it's done. When you have something that is monthly, that is consistent, that means that you can borrow. That means you might be able to get a car or get a house or save or invest. That is what really will help people to lift themselves out of poverty, is having stable, reliable sources of income in order for you to operate. And studies have shown that when people do not have stable sources of income, they tend to spend more because they figure that this is the last of it and you might as well spend it. But when you have some stability and when you have some structure, you can see much larger economic benefits. And even even further than that, these grants and so on that they put out, you've seen an expansion of the cash grant for students and so on. Somebody pointed out you don't even know if students are what their attendance is like, and whether they're getting 90% attendance, and if you have 80% attendance, can you get the grant or not? We're not rigorous in those areas, and I have never heard of anybody not receiving a grant because their child is attending at below a certain level. It's pretty much unheard of. That is the type of structure that is poor. What we're advocating for are structures that are good, consistent, and can meet national development goals. So that's the way that we're thinking about it, not just kind of like topping people up with a here and a there and hoping that the cash in the hand makes them feel happy. Meanwhile, when they go to the market, it's some serious punishment.
So what I'm hearing from you, Elson, is that there is a difference between throwing things here and there to make people feel good, and to make a newspaper headline or a news headline for the night, rather than really sitting down, saying, here is where the country is, these are the challenges the country have, and you have what I call historical challenges, and you have immediate challenges. And let us try to craft a budget that speaks to these challenges and try to say we want to take the country over the next 5 to 10 years to this place, and we want to begin with this budget to achieve that goal. So it's a question here of what is your vision for the country. And I'm hearing you saying that your proposal speaks to a vision, whereas we are looking at the budget by the PPP that is really a budget is made for headlines rather than dealing with the problem. $3,000 rise for old age pensioners. Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The key thing to remember is this. It is not a standard budget or a small budget. It is a massive increase, 4% bigger than last year. So for you not to have a similarly massive increase in the old age pension means that you have decided to prioritize other areas. And that is the question that you have to ask. Why are you prioritizing other areas? Now, they may say that, money is being spent on building the Demerara Harbor Bridge, which I think is about $21 billion, and then another $21 billion regarding the gas ashore project. However, I don't know if your viewers have picked up on this, but it's around $120, $130 billion that we're getting from oil and gas revenues. Okay? So only 40 or so is accounted for in those projects. Where is the rest of that money going? You see, you can't say, we're focusing on long-term national development projects when that's only about a $40 billion, the two big projects that are currently going to be implemented. So where's the rest of the money going? And we as Guyanese, as this is our first budget with oil revenues, I think we're kind of getting accustomed to it. One of the things we really need to pay keen attention to is this. According to the Natural Resources Fund Act, monies are only supposed to be used for national development priorities, especially those in connection with the green economy and, natural disasters and so on. Every last dime of the monies that we have gotten from the oil and gas industry must be accounted for. We have to know where every last dime went, what it was spent on, and what it was spent on has to be on a national development priority. We have to be specific about that. And I can tell you that is something that will be focused on by several MPs. They'll be asking those types of difficult questions. Because what may happen is you have the budget kind of go into, the oil money is going to a black hole, and we don't really know what has happened and so on. These types of initiatives, $3,000 for the pensioners, a slight increase in the tax threshold, these things could have been done without oil. They're not some large scale improvements. They could have been done without oil. So the question is what you did with the oil money. Put it plain and simple. What you did with the oil money. What are your actual plans for the oil money? These small things here and there, the top up there and there, these things are not substantial. This is normal. Where is the oil money? And that is what we must pay keen attention to, because otherwise you'll be surprised how quickly that money will be gone.
$20.8 billion for the gas to shore pipeline. Is that a good investment?
Well, what I would say is really concerned about this gas to shore project is this. This project keeps changing. Every 2 mornings, something else is changed. The cost is higher. The location is changed. It's very concerning. And as a result, it really does remind one of what went on with Amalia, where every 2 mornings the cost was getting higher and higher and things were getting out of hand and there was delays. Some people may say, oh, there haven't been delays with the gas to shore project. The gas to shore project is, I think, almost 2 years delayed. They've pushed back when that project is supposed to be completed. Why? That's the question. Is it mismanagement? What has been going on? And so Guyanese need to ask, why is it that we're having this project change and be pushed back and be pushed back? Why are the costs expanding? And does this look a little bit worrisome to us? So I mean, I don't know whether it's been, well, what I would say is some of the things that we're seeing are highly problematic, such as there not being a gas utilization master plan. We have a gas to shore project. We're going to bring gas to shore, but there's no plan as to how we're going to use the gas. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this is unbelievable. Whereas out in Trinidad, they have a very substantial plan. It very well worked out. I think it's over 700 pages and so on. And we're flying on someone's whimsy. And so that is an initial investment in the gas to shore project, one of many that I'm sure will come. But the project itself raises some serious questions, and we need to ask whether or not there is mismanagement. I'm not saying there is, but I am saying there are concerning things there. And so this 20 billion, I hope that it will be used well, but I'll believe it when I see it.
They continue to put a lot of money into sugar. And we've talked about this. The coalition government, when it was in office, attempted to make the sugar industry self-sufficient, right-sizing it, tried to make it not a drain on the rest of the economy, and tried to, in a sense, make it profitable. We have seen, I would argue, a reversal of that. And the big allocation in this budget, I think, is a reflection of that reversal. Comment on that, please.
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, this is about national priorities. And one of the things that I want to climb into here is, so this is $6 billion for Gaisuco. This is a Gaisuco that just said that it's going to reduce its production by almost a third. I don't understand how you're still giving monies when Gaisuco said it's going to reduce its production so substantially. One would think that would mean that Gaisuco will now be at an appropriate size and can fend for itself. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as I mentioned earlier, if you're reducing your production by a third, are you going to be reducing your staff by a third? Or does that mean that we are now going to have about a third of all of the people involved at Gaisuco there not doing anything productive? What in the world is going on? Alternatively, again, are they going to reduce salaries by a third to match the productivity, to match how much cane is being produced? I highly doubt that. So that means that, Gaisuco will be, it's the same funds, but it's much less productive than it really should have been. That's one half of it. The other half of it, though, is when you look at the University of Guyana, it costs around $4 billion to make the University of Guyana free on an annual basis. This is $6 billion that's gone to Gaisuco. The University of Guyana received, in this budget, a little over it's $3.5 billion. It received in the previous budget $3.3 billion. Now, the previous budget was 44%. This budget is 44% larger than the previous budget, right? Doesn't that mean that we should anticipate that the funds going to the University of Guyana should be 4 to 4% larger, right? Not
Yes, at least.
at
At a minimum.
At a minimum, right? Not almost the same number. And so what has happened is that in terms of what our nation spends on the University of Guyana, that has fallen by in excess of 25%, what we actually spend on university education as a portion of our national budget. The University of Guyana has been deprioritized. It is not a priority. It has been put on the back seat. And so the budget is much bigger, but the spending there is not much bigger in any way, shape, or form. We should have seen at least $4 or $5 billion to the University of Guyana in this particular budget, if it was to keep pace with how it normally should keep pace, in terms of the percentage of impact. But no, this budget has had almost the same amount for University of Guyana, despite being a massive budget, which is far, far larger than the previous budget. So this is incredibly concerning.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
I was saying it's
Elson,
incredibly concerning.
go ahead. Yes. Something jumped out at me in this budget. 47.9 billion, almost 48 billion for public safety. And I'll tell you why I want to zero in on public safety. As you would remember, last year we learned of these hidden security mechanisms that have been put in place, this regional security system and so forth. And the government couldn't give us very much information about where these things are located, what they're meant for, etc., etc. Now we have almost $50 billion for public safety. Are we to be concerned that this big sum and a lot of this money could be going into those secret security agencies?
Well, there's more than one way to cut crime. And one of the ways to do that is to reduce poverty, of course. The other thing I would say is that last year we saw Guyana go into the top 10 in the world for crime, which was, we should never be, it would never be acceptable in any country to be in the top 10 in the world for crime. It was utterly ridiculous. So that's something that we saw last year pop up. And now we're seeing spending, but is this going to be spending that's actually going to improve the situation? Are we going to have better training and better law enforcement and more policemen? That's not clear to me. So I'm waiting to see whether this will have any impact. On the other hand, given the PPP's history, I think it's very concerning when you see them spending money in the security forces, because I think the PPP has been irresponsible and has used the police in over the years for their political ends, which has really created an atmosphere of fear in Guyana, this stretches back to what has been termed the period of the Troubles and so on, when as a young Guyanese, I was afraid to go on the road and walk freely. So it is really concerning. When we look at what's happened with the Orrin Boston trial, again, this raised real concerns. And ultimately, what I would say is, if we don't see a real improvement in the security situation, this will amount to yet another failure. And when it comes to things like motorcycle out like hawks, just looking day and night for you, it's unbelievable.
Elson, I want us, you've touched on the education, and I want us to talk about the allocation for education. I want us to talk about the allocation for COVID-19 and fighting them, but I want us to be doing this conversation by Coretta McDonald, who would have an interest in those two areas. Of course, we invited Coretta to speak primarily on what's happening in the schools. We'll talk about that, but we'll have her join this conversation on the allocations for education, for COVID-19, and for public servants. What are public servants getting from this budget? We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Coretta McDonald is going to join the conversation. You are looking at Politics 101 on a Thursday evening, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.
I want to welcome the Honorable Coretta MacDonald. You are not charged this time. You are part of the jury. You're on that committee that's there to try your colleagues who behaved badly according to the PPP. They are charged by the PPP for behaving badly, and the charge was countenanced by the speaker, who is part of the charging, but I realize that he's also the judge, because you have 6 people on this committee, 3 for the opposition, 3 for the government, and the speaker. So the speaker is police and judge and jury. What's really going on in this so-called democratic house? Coretta, talk to me.
Dr. Hines, thank you for having me on your program once again, and good night to your viewers. It's quite a laughable situation, and I really don't think people are serious about getting on with the business of the poor and ordinary citizens of this country. As a matter of fact, let me say right off the bat, I don't condone indecent behaviors and the things that we're not accustomed to, what is not of the norm. But on the flip side of the coin, there is always a reaction or an equal reaction to an action, or an action that requires a reaction. And right here, if we look at what has been transpiring over the almost 2 years, we're coming down to 2 years since we would have been appointed as parliamentarians for this sitting of parliament, this session. We've seen in every instance, the speaker is provoking the opposition parliamentarians. And you know what? It is sad that we cannot, well, I shouldn't say we cannot. We can launch our complaints. We've been launching complaints. We've been writing, and we've been trying to upbraid the speaker on his attitude and the manner with which he treats the opposition. But you know what? We can't try the speaker, because the speaker is the person who's sitting on that committee as Lord, God, judge, police, thief, doctor, nurse, everything all in one. But you know what is good? It is good that we had the cameras, all of the cameras there. And the cameras showed not only the reaction of the opposition members, but it also showed the reaction of the government ministers who were sitting in parliament as well. I'm not sure if your technical operator has got parts of videos, but if he has, he would show you. We see a member of a minister sitting right on that, let me call it the podium for the want of a better word, right on the podium where the mace is supposed to be. We saw a government minister was sitting there. We saw other government ministers. Well, you see what we're seeing there? So yes. The thing is, if you're going to want to penalize, then you should be penalizing all and sundry, including yourself, because you're the one who provoked this. Mind you, all the opposition members were asking for in the person of the chief whip is that we defer this motion for a little more consultation. That is all we were asking for, because we recognize that even citizens across this country, the private sector, they were also saying we were not consulted enough on this motion. We were not consulted enough, and we don't want this thing to go through without us having our bit in. But for whatever reason, the government side, which would have been aided by this speaker, they wanted this motion to go through come hell or high water. And so we had that where the speaker decided that he was not going to listen. And if you see what was happening there, the chief whip was on the floor trying to continue to speak to to lay over his point to the speaker, and the speaker completely ignored him, and he give way to the minister with responsibility for finance for him to continue. And that in itself is what provoked the entire uproar that we saw on December 29th. But again, here is it. The 8 members of the opposition were identified for to face the Privileges Committee. 8 members. We are saying that our members were fighting for a just cause. And all of us were there participating in whatever was happening. And so we are trying to find out, why is it that you only selected 8 of our members? Why is it that you only did that? We had other members who were standing here or standing there. As a matter of fact, some of our members, no reason was given yesterday for them being Monday. No reason was given for them being placed in front of the Privileges Committee. And so we're trying to find out, what is this? As a matter of fact, let me highlight very quickly. MP Natasha Singh Lewis. No reason was given for her having to face the Privileges Committee. And so we are of the opinion that because Natasha Singh Lewis, 1, she's of Indian descent, 2, she is a Muslim woman sitting there in the parliament championing the cause of poor people. We're wondering whether this is a form of silencing her. This is a way to silence her. But let me assure our viewers here tonight, Natasha Singh Lewis will not be silenced by the speaker nor by the PPP. What you have done is to make make all of us even stronger. But let me go into the whole action of the Privileges Committee. I am no longer sitting on that committee as a member, because I would have given way to one of my senior colleagues who's an attorney. So he is going to be sitting there on that committee. But what is going to happen there is that charges will have to be read. And those charges, the persons who are going to be facing the committee, they're going to have to decide whether they are accepting the charges or they're not accepting the charges. And either way, they are going to be providing their evidence to support their claims. So it's not a rollover process or an overnight process. It is a process that will take some time. And every single member who is being placed in front of the Privileges Committee, they will have to be viewed separately or dealt with separately. So if people think that they're going to roll us over one sitting and finish, then that's not going to happen. Every single member of parliament would be given his or her chance or time, an allotted time, to do what they have to do, and then you deal with the others.
Okay. I am not in the business of giving advice. I have never sat in parliament for good reason, but I do hope that whoever is strategizing for the opposition side will not go before a kangaroo court and dignify it. I say no more.
I hear you.
If you're going before that court, do not dignify it. But let's move to the schools. It's been almost 4 weeks since schools have reopened. Your union, you've been very proactive. You've been trying to get the government to listen to you, trying to get the government to take cognizance of the rise in COVID-19 cases in the schools, and they've been adamant that they will have it their way. Please bring us up to date on where things are now for almost 4 weeks, because it's almost 4 weeks since school started.
Well, Dr. Hines, let me tell you what. Right now, they're shame. And pride got them where they are right now, and that's why they can't pull back on that decision to close the schools. But while they are not closing the schools are being closed. I can tell you that. Even if it's for 2 days, 1 day, 5 days, 14 days, the schools are being closed. Because you know what? When you have a school, one school, and we're only talking here about one class, with one class that has 18 pupils infected with COVID, and this is not hearsay. This is what the parents would have sent to the teachers via technology WhatsApp to say, Miss, my child would not be coming to school because, look, he is tested positive for COVID. She is tested positive for COVID. And this is only one class in a school that has over 600 pupils. So you can imagine there, the Ministry of Education, like everything else, we know how the PPP operates. And the PPP always want to go out there, even though they know that the water is right under their necks. They want to go out there to prove a point. And that's what the Minister of Education is trying to do. She wants to prove a point at the detriment or to the detriment of our children and their families, and by extension, the communities from which they came or the communities from which they come. But that's not of importance to her. What we have found, GTU, because we have done, we've put together a Google Sheet, and the reports we have been getting so far. Last week, we had over 465 teachers infected with COVID. And this, what I'm saying, is just a 1 week. And it's not the entire country. It's just about 5 regions. That information we've gotten. Our students and pupils, 364 or somewhere there, students who have contracted COVID. And these are just the authentic reports that we would have received. And there are many others. For this week alone, we have seen several schools across this country, in regions 4, in regions 2, in regions 1, in regions 8, and it's wild all over. In Georgetown, in regions 10, in region 6, every single region in this school, teachers are coming down with COVID. One of the sad part of it is that in region 1, in the Mabruma Township area, we saw there just last week a teacher, Miss Sanita Solomon. Her test on Wednesday proved that she was COVID positive. I guess she was not feeling well. And this is one of the dangers, and this is one of the heartless behavior of this administration and some of the persons who they have carrying out their mandates. I figure she wasn't feeling well. But you know what? She was forced to continue to attend school. Until Wednesday, she got her report, her results, saying that she's positive. That teacher was also diabetic. All she was told by the Ministry of Health in that area was to go home and isolate. It's sad. But on Friday of last week, between Wednesday and by Friday of last week, she was a dead woman.
Lord.
That teacher is a dead woman. So here is it. A family is mourning the loss of a sister, a daughter, a mother, a wife, a community worker, a teacher. You know, and people are still not taking heed. And this is not the first teacher. This is just one among the many teachers that we have lost so far to COVID. I don't know what is the difficulty. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know what the difficulty is. Right. The thing is, the pride. But you know what? I blame our parents. Because if our parents don't see the importance of having your children being safe and you want to send them out to school, then you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions. We have said to the Ministry of Education, just before the reopening of schools, we said to them, let's not reopen schools on the 3rd of January, simply because we are coming right out of the festive season where families would have been here, there, all over the place. Let's reopen schools on the 10th of January, where we are going to have a 1 week gap. And in that 1 week, all our signs and symptoms and everything, they're going to pop up. So by the time they get to the 10th, we know that persons would have already gone and have their tests done. And those who have to remain at home will remain at home. And the so-called safe ones will come out to schools. We also said that we needed to ensure that our schools are safe. We ask about spraying of these schools, which is the sanitizing of these schools. We saw, I'm sure you would have seen this. The first day of schools, we had garbage, heaps of garbage in front of schools. Tall grass in schools, in front of the schools, in the school compound, which was saying to us, and that is why we asked, the GTU asked, that schools not be reopened on the 3rd, because we knew that schools weren't ready. And coming in the face of that long period that we had schools out for the entire population, now that we were bringing them in, we needed to ensure that we had adequate numbers of furniture, we had adequate spacing, and we had a very, very complex plan with regards to how we are going to operate in school, whether we are going to have a shift system, whether we are going to do a rotation system, or whether we were still going to have a certain section of the school remain at home and we continue to work with our exam classes. But like I said, the Ministry of Education, they got a point to prove. And like Sherrod would say, things tight and money's got to make, which is sad. Because if we don't reopen schools, then the school feeding program can't go on and people can't make a side piece off of that. If we don't reopen schools, then we can't buy all the sanitizers and all the things that we are going to purchase now. We'll have limited amounts to purchase, and so monies can't make. Nobody can get side piece from those. So we have to reopen schools full blown, whether they're safe or not. We're reopening them. Hence the reactions we are having now. So we had schools like Eccles Primary closed for 2 days or a day and a half. But you know what happened at Eccles Primary? I learned that 2 days ago. 8 teachers from that school tested positive. One day, they got 8 positive results. In a
staff of how many? 8 out of how many?
I think it's a staff of maybe 28, somewhere there.
My goodness.
8 out of that staff, that number, were tested positive one day. All those results got in. The Department of Education, rather than talking with the head teacher and saying, look, we have to close this school. Rather than doing that, they allowed those teachers to go off. Mind you, this is a primary school where you have one teacher in front of a class all the time. So those teachers were intermingling and interfacing and mixing with their pupils all the time. Those pupils were mixing with other pupils. So if you understand what I'm saying, it's a whole circle that we're having there. But yet people not seeing that. However, that school was closed for a day and a half. They returned to work on Monday. And you know what? Some of the teachers who would have tested positive for COVID, they were forced to return to school. They were called out and asked to come to school. I mean, people head could good.
Yeah. Coretta, before we bring back Elson into the conversation and we talk about the budget, Lawrence, my brother Lawrence Houston here is asking whether the government may not be liable for some of these developments. For example, the teacher that died in the Northwest. Is the union thinking about advising teachers to bring some lawsuits against the government?
Well, the union right now is exploring that possibility.
Okay, good.
Because our teachers, many of them, fear has been instilled in them. And could you imagine, Dr. Hines? Teachers are not well, and they're prepared to go into school, to sit in the schoolyard on a chair to get sunlight. Because they're being told that they have to be in school. You have to be in school. I mean, I don't know whether the chief education officer is listening or somebody is listening who would report to the chief education officer and to the minister of education. But it's time we tell them schools must be closed. Just a couple of 2 Mondays ago, I think it was, the GTU called for an isolation day, isolation Monday. We had a 64% support for that day. But you know what? Many of the teachers who were in school on that day, many of them are now biting their fingernails and they're saying, you know, I should have heeded the call of my union, because if I had done that, we would not have been in the position that we're in now, where we have to be interfacing with pupils, children coming to school with fever, with cold. They're in the classroom bending their heads, they can't, and teachers have to attend to them. Teachers are in school. Teachers are out of school, and we still feel that the schools should be reopened. However, the GTU would have issued another call for the Ministry of Education to close all schools for a 14-day period to ensure that schools are properly sanitized. We're happy, though, that coming out of the highlights that we've been making with all that is happening, we've noticed that schools have been given adequate, well, not adequate, but additional furnishing would have been sent to schools. And let me say this, while it is not a doing on the part of the government, it is your obligation to ensure that schools are fully furnished. We are happy that this is happening. But I want to say, some of the schools that we noticed furnishing would have been sent to so that we can have children sitting one on a bench. I want to say, don't let the ministry camouflage us and do that, because I noticed quite a lot of the schools along Wolford Avenue, they have been attended to. And I know for sure that is happening because the GTU's headquarters is in Wolford Avenue. So they know that it's sometimes a walk across and just a little drive up the road where we can stop by at some of those schools. Let's do this across this country. Let's allow people to be treated equally across this country. And this has been a big cry over the years. Let's do this for our people, because when you stand there as Minister of Education and you stand there as Minister of Finance, you talk about all these monies and what you're doing for Guyanese people. So we must see that in action. I recall just last evening, my colleague from Mabaruma, the Honorable Ronald Cox, he was saying the same thing when we saw the minister posting textbooks, how many textbooks children are going to be getting, and tablets. He was making the same cry that we don't want to hear you talk this, but we want to see it happening in every single region. On the coastland, we want to see this happening because we know this is close, so you're going to do it. But in the hinterlands, we want to see the same thing happening there. So we must not talk, but it must be equity across the board.
Across the board. Thank you, Coretta, for that report. Let me bring in Elson. I assume, yes, Elson is still here. Elson, let's go on to the budgetary allocation for education. And both you and Coretta, you as an economist, Coretta as an educator, must have an interest in this. It's $74.4 billion out of a budget of $592 billion. We're talking about education, which anybody who knows anything about national development will tell you education is at the center, is at the core of any national developmental strategy. All right? Now here we have a budget of $592 billion, and just about 12 or 13% of that budget is allocated to education. We've been talking about priorities before, Elson. uh, you told us that the budget is increased by 44%. I don't have last year's budget allocation for education before me, but have we seen a concomitant increase in budgetary allocation for education in this budget?
Well, one of the things I think is important to note here is I think the PPP is really struggling when it comes to education in this country, because we're going to see we're going to see many more oil and gas sector jobs be produced and be available to citizens. As I personally believe that this is not the last time that Exxon will find oil, and you have other oil companies as well. So we anticipate that there'll be a substantial increase in the overall size of the industry. I think Exxon is looking at as many as 11 or 12 FPSOs, which is what produces the oil. And they've got, I think, 27 finds or something to that effect, which is a huge number of oil finds. So we have not seen a real pivot towards ensuring that we have a robust education system that will allow people to get access to these high-paying jobs. We may say that we want these foreign companies to employ Guyanese, but unless we're actually making the effort to train people so that they can meet these requirements, we're going to end up falling short. And, the Norwegians approach this problem by focusing on education, on training. And so as time went on, they were able to really get a huge number of people employed in that industry. Over 250,000 people in Norway are employed in that industry. And I think we're heading in a direction where we're going to need a huge workforce as well. So I think whenever you see a PPP budget that doesn't really focus on the oil and gas sector, you get very worried. I think that this is reflected in a couple of ways. Let's see what goes on with the gold scholarships and so on this year. However, they have not been laser focused on the oil and gas industry in the way that I believe that they needed to be. The second is that, and we go back to the University of Guyana issue. Now, University of Guyana has its oil and gas training center, and that is good. But, are we really just going to not expand those facilities substantially? Are we just going to let the university kind of idle along with very small increases on an annual basis, while we need huge educational changes in order to meet these workforce demands? It is totally absurd. It is not just that the University of Guyana needs to keep pace with its usual share of the national budget. Its share, as we discussed, has declined substantially. It is that we need to see that as an engine of development and build that institution out so that it can serve the challenges that the country faces. Having one or two programs is not going to be enough. It needs to be much more robust. And I see University of Guyana, as I have always seen it, at the heart of the Guyanese economy and development strategy. That is something that, it has been discussed and that the coalition has talked about. And, as we go forward, we're going to be seeing plans regarding education. Of course, the coalition has called for it to be free immediately, the university, and for there to be a stipend, which will allow students to, help students with things like their travel expenses or their internet expenses, because you really can't study nowadays without having access to the internet. This needs to be a real focus of the Guyanese economy. The University of Guyana has been really neglected, and I think that is leading to a huge structural problem where we will have a large number of jobs created in one industry, but not many people trained to actually fill those jobs who are local people. So what will we do? We will import tremendous amounts of labor. We will bring in everybody and their mother from Trinidad. No offense to the Trinidadians that might be watching. And, Guyanese, who really should be benefiting first and foremost from this massive growth, will not be benefiting. So when I see an allocation like that to University of Guyana, I get very concerned, because it looks like we're just going down the path of great inequality, where, about half of the population, and it cuts across race as well, because I am confident that more than half of Guyanese do not have both math or English, and do not have the five subjects that is required for you to, I think it's 5 subjects, to get into the University of Guyana. This means that in many ways they're cut off from some of the high-paying jobs in the oil and gas industry, becoming an engineer and so on. We need to address these things, because if we do not, it will result in substantial inequality and will result in foreigners coming in, taking all of the jobs that are generated, and Guyanese being left perpetually on the sidelines. We've been on the sidelines for long enough. This is our time, and we need to do much better.
And of course, a university is as good, Coretta, as what goes into the university. Someone who teaches in a university, I can tell you, what we see in the universities is often a reflection of what comes out of the high school and primary school system. So even as we talk about what is allocated to the university, Coretta, what is allocated to education at the lower levels, because that's the nursery to feed into the university, to feed into the workforce. And so therefore, when you look at the allocation of, I would say, a mere $75 billion in a budget of 600 billion, I would say that it is inadequate. What do you think?
You know, Dr. Hines, and I would want to join with Elson in saying it is a worrying. It is worrying. Sometimes you have to tap your ear yourselves to make sure that what you're hearing and what you're seeing, that it's real. This is saying to us that education definitely is not priority for this government.
Yes, it's not.
And if you notice what is happening, look at what has been allocated to the University of Guyana. Look at what has been allocated to the sugar industry.
Yeah.
Now we're talking here, the University of Guyana is the university that we want to churn out our best minds, young best minds, so that they can be pushed to that level to take over the country after you and I would have signed off. But if we're not putting that kind of emphasis there, then you understand what is happening. But let me go on the flip side of the coin. We're not paying attention to our local university, but we are doling out millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars to universities outside of Guyana. You notice?
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
Any proper government, any government that is worth their salt would want to build on what they have, not to build what people got somewhere outside that you got no claims to. But we, in the form of this gold scholarship program, you look and see the amount of scholarships that are being offered to the University of Guyana, which would bring some monies to them, as against the monies that are given to universities all across the place, all over the place. And it's sad. Now, when we go to what is happening at the lower levels, we recognize that this government is a government that believes in palancing. This government, that's what they believe in, palancing themselves around. And so the Minister of Education is proud to be shooting up on her Facebook page, you know, oh, $30,000 to school children because we care. Oh, they're giving this to school feeding program because we care. Oh, they're giving that to textbooks because we care. And when it boils down, you would see the monies that they're allocating to printing of textbooks or purchasing textbooks. I had to say it last night. I hope every child would have a textbook for every subject to take home, not the school set. Don't tell us about you're giving so many textbooks, because in actual fact, these textbooks are what you're going to be given to schools across the country, which they'll use in the schools. We don't want to see that. We want to see every child being given a textbook for each subject that they can take home with them, so they can do their own revision at home, so they can do exercises 1 and 2 when the teacher gives the homework. Not that the child would have to copy from what is in when he or she is in class. And so this is the big glorification and the big mamagaying for Priya Manik Chand. Oh, we're giving 30,000 now to children because we care. The grant to children. I said it before when the $19,000 was being distributed. I said, rather than giving $19,000 cash to parents, when we know many of those parents, they were dismissed from their jobs. if they're facing hard times and you put cash in their hand, what do you think they're going to do with it? They're going to buy food and put on their tables. And you know, when I made those statements, the Minister of Education, her response was, we don't want to dictate for people, so we're giving the parents the money. And even if they buy a water tank, at least the child will still benefit from it. I mean, how can you rationalize that kind of response? You think somebody sensible would give that kind of response? Now, I said to her then, rather than giving the $19,000 cash, we have a pandemic not only here in Guyana, but all over. And if you look at what the other territories, let me come closer, in the Caribbean are doing, they are offering online classes. They are giving tablets and computers to their pupils and their students. I said, let's give our parents, if a parent has 5 children, present that parent with 5 tablets. Present that parent with 3 tablets because they're going to have to use it. So what we should have been doing at this time in our budget is to boost up the internet systems across communities in this country. But you know,
now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bed there'll be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, neighbor. Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me work for. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. This is all the money that me work for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, now I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Oh, Joseph. How Joseph? Who Joseph we talking about? Joe Hamilton? Polari Joe? Morning, morning. Are you welcome to another program of Morning Time? Listen, it's Friday. The weekend started since Wednesday. I should not have been working today, so if you think I'm late, forgive me for that. But I'm not late. I wanted you to have the full benefit of most of the discussion which went on last night, especially on the economics aspect of things. The budgetary aspect of things. But if I were to allow that to run to its natural conclusion, then it would have been finished about 8 o'clock. And so we would have had to go directly into the call-in segment. But there are some things I would like to talk about. And so naturally they had to be stopped. Those of you who want to continue to follow that discussion, the program is on KAMSTV page, and so you can move across there later in the day and continue to view the program. But how have you been? How have you been since yesterday and the day before and the night after? How have you been? Trust you were productive yesterday. Trust you earned some money. Trust that money was not swallowed up by the inflationary prices on the market and in the supermarkets and so on. I certainly hope you remain healthy and that you did not get infected, nor did you cause anyone to get infected. COVID is raging. And you have to protect yourselves, because when you protect yourselves, you protect others. And so each of us has a role to play. And if each of us plays that role, then the possibility is we will take control of things. Good. It's Friday. I expect later today to have a good time at Kidam's Hideout. Loud music hitting you in the stomach with the bass line. Having a good time. buying drinks at pre-pandemic cost, right? But let's talk about the budget. Yesterday the question was, what is in the budget for you? Today is, where is your money being spent? All of this money is being budgeted for schools and roads and security and buildings and all manner of things, which naturally a lot of people wouldn't know about. They just know about the broad talk. 74 million allocated for this or that, 65 million allocated for this or that. But there's a way of finding the details of what the monies are being allocated for. The budget estimates usually comes with several volumes. I noticed this year's budgetary estimates, there are 3 volumes. And so I was spending some time picking through volume 3, I think, this morning. What, you want to tell if yours good morning? Oh, good, all right. Look, this stuff is out there. Yes, and so I was able to nitpick and find some of the projects and programs that your money will be spent on. It's important that we know these things, right? Because the budget is transformational. It is a very transformational budget. Ghana is going to be transformed. But do you know, a lot of people catch a fit when people use certain terminology. But do you know you can have positive or negative transformation? Yes, you can have positive or negative transformation. Let me beg your indulgence. My daughter is here, so I need to attend to her. She has to get something as part of her school project. Give me a minute. Pardon? Sure. Oh yes, sorry about that, y'all. Yes, I was saying it's important that you know where your money is going to be spent. Don't let me give you these broad brushes, because it's important to know. I was looking at the capital estimates for Region 4, for example, and I'm already upset, very upset, because when you look at allocation for capital works, infrastructure, you see bridges and roads, and so there's going to be road construction at Cane Grove. I hope you guys understand the geography. Remember, let me establish in the first instance that the Region 4 administration in Chairman Siram and Vice Chairman Sandy and the others of the councillors complained bitterly that they had no part to play in putting together the budget for Region 4 because the regional executive officer usurped everybody's function, did the budget, submitted it, and regardless of the complaints they made and who they complained to and the actions they threatened to take and so on, nothing was changed. So it's not a budget that was compiled, Region 4 budget was not compiled necessarily by the representatives of the people, right? But by the REO, who technically is a creature of the PPP, that particular office, REO, is a confusion, quite frankly. Because the REO is a creature of the political party or creature of the government, but is answerable to the council. And so you have all kinds of confusions happening there. But when you look at roads and bridges, you see there's going to be a construction of a road in Cane Grove, a single road in Cane Grove. You have rehabilitation, repairs if you want to call it that, of roads at Monrepose and Mocha, right? You have upgrades at Mahaika, Newtonsville, Prospect, Martyrsville. Do you the road aspect of capital? And it looks as though Sideline Dam is not going to in my neck of the road. The lone road on this list that is in a predominantly black community is Mocha. Right? That's a lone road in a predominantly black community. Mocha, Mahaika, Newtonsville, Prospect, Martyrsville, Cane Grove. They are all Indo-Guyanese dominated communities. What does that say about the REO? Who put this list together? What does that say about the Ministry of Local Government, where this list had to be submitted? Dharamlal, single source Dharamlal. What does that say? Yesterday I said the PPP budget appeared to be a thoughtless one, and someone corrected me and said, no, it wasn't thoughtless. It was a very thoughtful budget because they knew what they want to do. And that is they want to leave Afro-Guyanese community behind, communities behind. I don't care who calls me racist, because I'm continuing to make my case and I'm using the evidence of the budget, budgetary allocations, to make that case. Right? I see a lot of people kicking up a stink because a particular individual said the budget is transformational. Yes, the budget is transformational. To transform something is to change it. The budget is going to bring about a lot of changes. They're not necessarily positive changes for one group of citizens. They're not necessarily positive changes for black communities. But there's certainly positive changes for Indo-Guyanese communities, Indo communities. Afro communities will be left back, and that's a change. If you black stand back, as a matter of fact, some people would argue that if it were different, then that would have been the change, because black standing back has always been the mantra of the PPP. Let me give you another example. Farm access roads. We like to talk about produce or perish. We like to talk about consume what you produce and so on. They like to say black people are lazy. They don't like, we've been talking about these things, that black farmsteads were basically left to run down. I noticed, good morning, Shelly. Shelly the Raider. How you the girl? Oh, them young ones. I mean, they're adults by now, but they're still young. Shelly's complaining about signal. A number of people complain about signal. I am not seeing a signal issue from my end. So most likely your internet service provider is. But the whole story is, we'll cope. We have to cope with what we're getting right now in terms of internet. There's much. Right? So yes, I'm saying the APNU invested in the Rural Agriculture Infrastructure Development Program. The areas were Ithaca, Buxton, Triumph, and Mocha. I think there were 4 areas. Right? 4 areas. I hope there wasn't a 5th, but I think those 4 areas. And so they addressed their drainage issues and so on, and cleared lands and provided equipment, much of which has been disappeared under the PPP and so on. But lo and behold, many of these communities have complained about the absence of farm to market roads, all-weather roads, farm to market. I know in Buxton, for example, when the PPP took office, when they were installed, the agricultural minister, installed as he is, went to Buxton, Bagdam side, Friendship Bagdam side, and spoke to some people who gave them a listening ear and so on, and they made some promises. If I'm not mistaken, one of the promises was to give them farm to market road. I don't see this on the list. But when I look at farm access roads, you have farm access roads at Parika. Remember, Parika right now is a big agricultural producing area because of a program similar to the road program that the PPP had done in Hububag. And so it's a good, but we talking the thing. The list of farm access roads that will be done from this budget. Listen, I know you know your local geography, so I don't have to say too much. Parika, farm access road. Timeri, farm access road. Big Baibu, farm access road. Molson Creek, farm access road. Abari, farm access road. Again, you can see the ethnic bias in the allocation of monies to develop farm access roads. If I were to take Timeri as a black community, I think it is more mixed. Then I will say Timeri is the only black community out of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20%. Right? Timeri is the only black community in that list. So the thing is, as you will recognize with these allocations, which I just referenced, is that they're giving resources to a whole lot of Indian communities, and then throwing the token African community in there, and they will claim that they're not biased. But there's a clear bias there. Right, so I am pointing this out to show you, for example, where your money is being spent. Because it's your money, it's coming from the Natural Resource Fund. A lot of these projects, if you check the estimate that I was looking at, they actually have a description of where financing is coming from, where the international financing is involved or not. And all of these projects, it is interest in scrutiny and justification of anything. Right? You have no interest in that. And so there is no ethnic balance in the allocation of these funds to these projects. And therefore, there is no ethnic balance, there is no equity in the allocation of resources to national development. I noticed Andre Sam early. Let me tell you, Andre, it's a pity that you're using the name Sam because I know you're not a Sam. The Sams are not stupid. I'm a Sam. I'm a proud Sam. We are stupid. We don't indulge in ignorance. And I've noticed you've been talking a lot of ignorance all morning. But I don't think I'll be spending too much time on you. You're not going to distract me with anything. I would say that I'm not giving a balanced view when I am quoting from the budget. If the view is imbalanced, quoting from the budget, then it says that the budget is imbalanced, and that's the point I'm making. The allocation of the resources in the budget in the allocation of resources in this budget. Right? As I continue to talk about where your money is being spent, right? Because at the end of the day, the discussion will be there, and those who have not had an opportunity, right, to view will very well be able to go back on KAMSTV page and get to view what's happening there. Right? So I'm saying that that guy came and said, you know, Guyanese will have enough disposable income to cushion the effects of inflation and so on. The short cook argued that the policies of the government, tax policies and so on, will bring ease to the citizens of this country. Let me tell you one of the areas where they see the tax policy bringing ease to Guyanese. They are going to remove 10% excise tax and 40% VAT that applies to importation of new trucks. Who are the people to benefit from the importation of new trucks? Does the average Guyanese import new trucks? Talk to me. Does the average Guyanese import new trucks? But the 10% excise tax and 40% VAT will be removed. It's going to benefit the people who are investing in the oil industry. They have services are what? The moneyed class in this country, people who can afford to buy trucks, are getting further relief because they're removing 10%. They're removing the and similar vehicles, heavy-duty transport, like moving containers to the oil industry and so on, what we call them low bed and that kind of equipment. They will no longer be required to pay the 14% VAT. Who are the people who import this kind of equipment? We have already heard that a lot of the operatives. So we're making it easy for Trinidadians to import, for an example, these vehicles, pickups, below 2000 cc. And reducing excise tax from 110% to 75% for new double cab pickups between 2000 and 3000 cc. Who are the people that buy? The average person who has a double cab pickup, they are giving more to the haves. And these are measures which are supposed to make more disposable income available to Guyanese, right? Remove 10% excise tax altogether in relation to importation of new single cab pickups below 3000 cc. I made a point about pickups. Remove 14% VAT on cranes, safety equipment, and oil spill response equipment. So in short, Remove 2% withholding. All right, I'll deal with that. Remove 2% withholding tax on resident contractors to reverse the punitive measures implemented by previous administration. Resident contractors paying a 2% withholding tax as a form of punishment. And so they're going to remove it. Our large contractors in this country look like them. Look, our nation of these things. You're removing the $70,000 and $80,000 in the public service spent, and who are the beneficiaries, right? Cash grants have now been moved from uniform grants from $4,000 to $5,000 per child. $1,000, right, has been added on to the uniform grants for our children. But like I explained yesterday, the economy is projected according to the short group to expand by almost 50%. But the increases that they're giving for these things, in this instance, 1,000 over 4,000 will tell me it's 25%. Right? So the increase to cushion the effect of this expanding economy, which will facilitate expanding gap to cater for supporting the vulnerable. My God. Remember, they say count to 10. Good morning, Ricardo Rodriguez. You have a name of infamy. And your thought processes too are as corrupted as the name you carry. Supporting the vulnerable. Under the David Granger administration, dialysis centers were established in certain areas in the country. I know for a fact in Borbis, to assist patients who had to get dialysis. Now, if you are a person needing dialysis, in most instances, you have to do dialysis 2 and 3 times a week, depending on how severe your case is. And so in order to assist those people, the APNU administration had established dialysis centers in some areas. Free of charge, basically. As soon as the PPP came into office, they shut down that arrangement. And therefore, people had to be paying for their dialysis at private institutions. Now the government is telling you in the budget that they will support the vulnerable with a maximum of $600,000 a year for each and every dialysis patient in Ghana. Government will introduce a dialysis support program under which we will finance up to $600,000 per year worth of dialysis treatment for each and every dialysis patient in Ghana. Now, looking at the language, it gave me pause. Because the question isn't. The question is this. Jason McDonald is saying 5G dialysis is the best thing, best Ghana got. Did you benefit from the services? Tell us about the cost, Jason. Right? The language gave me pause because the question I'm asking in my mind, is this $600,000 per patient? Because I lack understanding. But y'all help me. Government will introduce a dialysis support program under which we will finance up to $600,000 per annum worth of dialysis treatment for each and every dialysis patient in Ghana. Right? Marcy Darcy, don't let us talk about whose facility they will use yet. Let us try to clarify Is this $600,000 per patient? Or is it $600,000 for the entire population? Because the reality is, in many instances, one single patient spends more than $600,000 a year for dialysis. Right? Seriously. If you're a dialysis patient, dialysis costs what? I can't even remember. Let's say $10,000 per session. I think it's more like 50. Right? And you're required to do 2 or 3 sessions per week. If you do 2 sessions per week, at $10,000 a session, that's $20,000. Multiply that by 52 weeks, that's in excess of $1 million. Am I right? And so one patient, quite frankly, will use up that $600,000 in less than a year. So I need some clarity here. Is it $600,000 per patient? Because they say every single patient. Right? Or is it $600,000 the entire population of patients needing dialysis? I don't know. I'm asking. Those who have the answers. If you have seen the shark cook, you could stop here and ask him. So long as he is sober. Oh, lad. Public assistance is now, we know, $2,000 more. Good. Well, how do you survive on $14,000 in an economy that is expanding by almost 50%? How do you do that? And so they say they are really and truly, they are supporting the vulnerable. I don't know how, but, and here's the big one. Good. Somebody was asking whose facilities are they going to use? Well, of course, the majority of these facilities are owned by their friends and cronies. Right? One of the fastest growing medical services in this country is, somebody knows it, y'all call the name for me, Sheriff Medical Services. I've seen astronomical growth and expansion of Sheriff Medical Services, Sheriff Security. Right? Husband King is telling me dialysis is normally 3 times a week, so here we go. In 20 weeks, the majority of these kind of services are available at private institutions. I make no bones about it, and this is going to answer a question that some clown was asking earlier. I can't remember if it's whoever, but some jagabat was asking earlier. Who stopped Guyanese, who stopped Afro-Guyanese from investing in certain equipment or certain services and so on? Good? The policy of government stops Guyanese. The policy of government. For you to establish a private medical facility, you have to jump through hoops and rings. And for as long as the authorities don't favor you, you don't get licensed. They frustrate the hell out of you, so you give up before you even get licensed. And so a lot of these medical facilities which are blossoming around the country now are blossoming because they are friends and cronies of the PPP. Black people typically get shut out of certain sectors of this economy. Let's not pull wool over our eyes and play decent and be afraid of people calling us racist. I call it as it is. Remember the black brother who was into the oil import business, fuel import business? As soon as the government changed, Sharma or whatever his name at Ghana Energy Authority, they got colossal lash in him. Up to now, I don't think he's back in business. They suspended his license, if not took it away. Up until now, I don't think he's back in business. Like in funeral parlor, that was picking up dead bodies for the state for more than 50 years or more than 20, 30 years, whatever. But they were doing it since I was a little boy. I know Lycan was moving states dead. As soon as the PPP got in office, they take a lash in Lycan and took away the license. Now they have given it to some, what is place name in Le Repentier Cemetery there? Some kind of, I know, cemetery gardens or some kind of garden, something. Government policy. Lock certain people. They will remove the withholding tax from individuals whose total income, right? That's interest you get in your savings. It's not more than $10,000 a year. You're not going to pay withholding tax. That will increase your disposable income. How much money do you have to have on the banks to get $10,000 a year in interest? Right? Does the average Guyanese citizen earn $10,000 a year in interest on their savings deposit, let's say? Talk about that. Taxpayers will get a deduction from their chargeable income for premiums paid to life medical insurance up to 10% of their income. Naturally, if you have to pay for insurance, why y'all want me blank Mr. Sam? Allow Mr. Sam to have his way now, man. Y'all big, y'all got focus. Y'all big, but y'all is stupid. Right? Why y'all is worried with these folks, sir? I'm just sorry that he's desecrating the name Sam. Oh, Lord. And of course, we know that the monthly income tax threshold has been moved from 65 to 75,000. Well, yesterday we had a good laugh on that. Because based on what I'm understanding, the current minimum wage is $100 less than the income tax threshold. Right? And so the short trick is simply playing games with you. Simply playing games. They will revert to the pre-2015 entitlements of remigrating people who are returning with vehicle and so on. I want to draw well, when I look at healthcare, I recognize that all of the new healthcare facilities are again in predominantly Indian communities. I know the Buxton Health Center, for example, was there for several years, slated to become a cottage hospital. And nothing has happened to it so far. But I see new areas are going to be getting cottage hospitals and so on. I wonder why Buxton is always left out. Of note, y'all remember the First Lady started a sanitary napkin program? Imagine in a developing country, an oil-producing country, a country which economy is expected to grow by almost 50%, or some agent of the state has to be providing sanitary napkins to citizens. Because the disposable income, right? The disposable income this particular group of citizens to buy sanitary napkins, which is a part of their personal hygiene and health care. At least that's the message I'm getting from the First Lady's program. Ready to step in and fill that gap to adolescent females. You know how much money is going to our program this year? $50 million. $50 million for the First Lady, Aria, or whatever her name is, to distribute sanitary napkins and so on, and production and promote menstrual hygiene. I'm thinking in my head that it will also aid in her making more trips to Los Angeles and so on. That's what your tax dollars are doing. That's what your oil resource fund money is doing. Of course, I can't have all the discussion today because time is upon us. So let us open up the lines. It's 8 hours 25. Open up the lines and let's talk the thing. Where is your money being spent? Where is your money being spent? 500 and what was it? 552? $552.9 billion budget. Big money. Y'all hear about these big money. Y'all hear about this large allocations to sectors. But I'm sure you know, understanding where the allocations are going. At least in some instances, like I pointed out. In the new week, I'm sure we're going to continue to examine some of these allocations, where they're going. Right? Lines remain 6225933 is the number to call. I trust that I've shown you how transformational the budget is. Or I'm starting to show you how transformational it is. Because it is transformational. Let us not run from that. Right? You can have all kinds of transformation. Negative and positive. It depends on how you look at it. The cup is half full or the cup is half empty. So y'all don't go losing sleep. Right? Ghana is going to be transformed. We're going to see a lot of high-rise buildings and so on. Shiny projects. But the people are, the ordinary rank and file citizens of this country are going to be poorer. Call A Live, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I look well, yeah. Now with this thing with the people complaining about the internet. Now lots of people go and take internet from those networks like e-networks and all the other people who become internet providers. Now the internet, those people don't have an outstation. All they might do is put up a big iron dish somewhere on the dragging internet. Now GT&T is the sole provider of internet throughout Guyana. GT&T will sell them an amount. Now when you first join up with these people, they're giving you good internet service. And then after a time, your internet service start to give problem. Then the next thing with these providers, they don't like the contents of these programs. So now when they are supplying you with their internet service, and you are on programs that is opening eyes like you, Dr. Hines, Sherrod, and so, hence they will have that so that they cannot hear what is being said. Because those people are people from the installed regime, and the installed regime is trying to suppress all these types of views that is getting out into the open world, and the world is seeing them for who they really are. So all of you who run to say, oh, mean by the Baba GT&T. GT&T is the parent provider of internet. And once GT&T, because if I got a business and I doing retail and wholesale, and I got more retailers than wholesalers, and in this type of economical divide and all kind of thing in the economical world, I gonna try to let my people still get so they could attract more public people to me, and I could think. But the only thing with GT, they could have bring down their internet fee. They could have taken it down on that, especially the first one like Bronze. Anyway, moving along. Now this thing with the buying of sanitary napkins, that is a private thing between a parent and the child. And I don't feel that parents out there should say, oh, because of my poor status, I must let people buy sanitary napkins and give it to my girl child. Because when this girl get accustomed, oh, we're going to get this, the girl will gather that IQ in her. Oh, anybody could give me something. Something as close as a period. People try by it. I was a nurse with 2 daughters menstruating. They were teenagers, 1 year apart, and I never suffer. At the time, I used to travel on truck and all kind of thing to go to work, because my girl children could not have taken anything from anybody, let alone something as close as a packet of pads. So the people them who go run, and when you see a daughter start, they taking part from the minister, they taking this from somebody, and they go down the wrong way, yeah, don't vex. You're poor, yes, but there are certain things in poverty you don't let run away. Because when you let run away, it's gone thing. Now my thing, when I talk, people are vexed. Now I am listening to the run-up of the budget and the thing. The budget is so geared that we, the bottom people, cannot get any money. And I hope those teachers on the East Coast who did what they did to the election of 2020 see this spin-off. The government know that the teachers are a part of the public sector workers. And if we increase public sector workers, teachers will benefit. And the done got a scorn for teachers to see that the teachers willingly on the East Coast did their dirty work. They know what? We're going to spite everybody. We ain't going to give nobody no increase. If they didn't do what they do, last year they would have got elected to get big money. And for the 2 years you see they ain't getting, they would have get a lot of money. So those teachers who did what they did, I hope y'all are happy to see how you have plunged this country. And as the budget goes on from the installed regime, they wouldn't be giving y'all anything. I hope y'all get paid when y'all do the dirty work. The cries of the Guyanese people are on those, the bunch of teachers who did what they did. Last, now I understand the say they're going to the harvesting. They said people going to give they ain't going to take out your body parts. You're going to sign to giving out your body parts. Now God created everybody with one organ. The only organs that are being split in a person is the eyes, the ears. The women got ovaries, they got the lungs, and they got the kidneys. Now, if somebody want an eye, I gonna sign a paper. You think I gonna let anybody dig out? And they gonna dig out one. Me 2 eyes to give to anybody. So, Guyanese, you all stand up for this body harvesting. I have seen pictures with body harvesting. When you take a body part, you got a viable time that this part could live, even if they put it on ice. If you take out a heart, I don't think the heart could last a trip from Guyana to the United States of America, a body part. Because by the time you take it out, and by the time you take it out partly at the airport. So as soon as you take out this heart, pop, you put it in the carrier, you jump on the jet, no problem. You deplane in America within a certain time. And the body must go for there at the airport for they do the heart surgery. Guyana, with its stinking health organization, a woman go forget a baby. She walk into the delivery room and she can't walk for come out. Them they can't take out you body parts. Now you're going to go and take out somebody's kidney and give it to somebody because the person signed on the paper. What is Frank Anthony bringing on Guyanese? Guyanese people, not that I know it all. I ain't know it all, but I know a great lot. Look at pictures. I can't remember. I'm going to find out the picture. The pictures show what has happened with body harvesting. The only parts of the body will come in twos is them things so I name. So now somebody got up, you got one heart, you know. Somebody, you sign a paper and you go in there, take out your heart. What you live upon? You know, you live upon death. How you going there? So, yeah, all people get sensible. Not because the people say, yeah, I got to follow them. That's just like when they rushing and pushing the vaccine down people's throat. Now Frank Anthony, the flipping fool, because America said they giving a third dose, the booster. He ordering that people get booster. But Frank Anthony, he reading for see what happening to the people in the outer world who take the vaccine, the poison. I got a good friend who take the poison outside, and the amount of health challenges and health problems the individual going through, it's gross. It is gross. And people out here are having health challenges. I know of a good friend, I want to tell this story. But me and you could actually be going to talk to where we meet.
Okay,
but
Rana, thank you.
Something. People got to be woke and watch at what is going on. And all around Guyana, a lot of private hospitals coming up. You got the public hospital there, and around the corner, the private hospitals building up. And you could remember when the people were asking for nurses to be imported and medical people to be imported, those same people, lots of them are at the private hospitals, bungling up people's life. So y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'm thinking we would need an entire program to discuss the body parts bill, as I like to call it. Because it's indeed a serious matter. You look around the world, you have trafficking in persons, as we call it, takes many forms. Good? And Rana says she doesn't believe that a heart will last long enough from Guyana to the US, for example. But technology is so advanced these days that they have systems and ways and means of preserving and transporting body organs and so on. But the reality is, when you look around the world, legislation or not, people are removing body parts from other people and selling it to those who can afford to pay for it to prolong their lives. As many people would say, I would observe, it is only the poor, or it is the majority poor, who will suffer in instances like these. Right? The majority poor are the ones who will suffer in instances like these. Because it is those who have the wherewithal, those who have the facility, those who have the financing, etc., to pay for such services that will benefit from it. Just neighboring Brazil, Brazil had a big problem like that. I don't know if they still have. And this is way before now. Right? I remember as a youngster, the issue of trafficking in person was big in Brazil while I was yet a youngster. Venezuela. We have had our own and continue to have our own challenges with trafficking in person. And trafficking in person is not necessarily for sex all the time. But in some instances, it is for organ harvesting. And so, yes, we have to talk about that. And since we are dealing with an oil-producing country, where the big shots of the developed world will be coming to buy property, to invest in real estate and so on, and to live and to invest in our economy and so on, I guess all of these bills and so on that are being pushed through the parliament are aimed at making Ghana an attractive place to them. And so there must be a reason why you want these bills to pass through the parliament to make Ghana an attractive place to them. Because there must be a demand for some of these services. And so Guyanese, yes, have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant. We have to be our brothers' keepers. One of the concern, and I'm hearing Rhonda talk about it also, is our medical services are so lax in this country. Even if there's legislation to monitor and keep them in line, those certainly are not being enforced. Right? Those certainly are not being enforced. And so with that laxity, people who suffer as a result of the provision of these services really and truly don't have a recourse. For example, and these are examples that many of you know, right? We have people who have gone to the hospitals for surgery for one thing, and they were operated on for other things. We have people who went to the hospital for surgery, and when they were closed up, instruments were left in their bodies and so on. And they have been able to get zero recourse. No compensation for the agonies that they have had to live life with. Right? And so picture this organ transplant, this body parts bill. People going for one thing and then they turn up with missing parts, missing body parts. What recourse do you have? What compensation can you expect, etc.? Call it live, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kadaki, and your listeners. I'm listening to you for a very long time. Now I decide to place a call because I heard you all talking about organ harvesting. Could you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Go ahead.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Speak to me. Don't listen to the program.
My car, the radio was playing. Yeah. Years ago.
Caller, can you start all over again? We weren't hearing you. We lost your connection.
Okay. I'm a recipient of organ it's a long, drawn-out process, and I don't think Guyana have the ability to do such an invention to people in Guyana, because for train very tedious things, you have to go through a long process. I'm going to go to the first step that you take. The first step, you have to take 25 vials or tubes of blood sample, okay? And all those samples are they tested for all different ailments. Then you gotta
Caller, can you hear me?
the transport. Yes.
It would be best for you to send us a voice note. Your call is going in and out. Please send us a voice note. You there? Yes, voice note. I'm very interested in what the call is saying.
This is gonna make the third time I call in. I think y'all just help out people, like people who in need of help, and like people who their house fall, because I call and I message already and tell y'all that my house fall down and I have 6 children, and I would like to know what is the process I have to do to get the help. What is the process I have to go through that you have to help me with my house that far, because it's very low, it's flat on the ground, and I frightened that snake has to crawl because I have little children. I have 3 little children, and the house have hole and so underneath. So I hear that y'all help people, like people who house fall down and who in need and of help. But I send a message through 2 times already, and I did not see anybody reply. I'll see y'all read the thing and y'all in answer. So I would like to know what's going on, if it's not this number or if it's another number you have to call for get through with these things, because I really in need of the help. Right? I concerned about my children, because sometimes night time I sleep or study, if anything could crawl up and bite them. And
Call me after the program. Call me about 10 o'clock. So I'll talk with you. 6225933 is the number to call. The lines remain open. Caller, let's talk about a thing. Where is your money going? What is it being spent on? Who are the beneficiaries? How transformational is the budget? Let's talk about that. You're going to see lots of high rises. There is going to be the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, I think. At least monies have been allocated for that. At least for the feasibility studies or for the development of that and so on. Monies have been allocated for hydroelectricity. They say the aim of the government is to reduce the cost of electricity by 50%. Right? Never mind they can't maintain a few gensets. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks or so, we had people using the wrong lube in generating set. And then yesterday or day before yesterday, I think we had a generating set catching a fire at the Essequibo generating station there, where the AP and UFC invested hundreds of millions of dollars to ensure that Essequibo gets reliable electricity. One of the sets caught fire there. I'm waiting to hear if heads would roll, because in other places, heads would certainly roll. People like Dindial would have been packing their traps early. Call your live, good morning.
Yes, good morning to your listeners too. Has anyone noticed where, or I should say, realize where these 6 new hospitals would be built? In the sense that they're all Indian villages / communities? Now, my point is, Bath Settlement is about 2 miles. My point is, why no hospital in Bath Settlement, which is a PPP stronghold, why couldn't they extend our staff? There is where it shows the intention of this administration to have all their support base with all the necessary, be it health facilities or health facilities / institutions and these kinds of things, which I find very, very unfair to the Black communities. And then the next thing too, it would be providing jobs for people in those villages / communities. So I don't know if I'm the only person who have taken notice of that. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. No, you're not the only person who has taken note of where the hospitals are being established. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of apartheid in this country. People may not believe it. We have a whole lot of apartheid in this country. In every sector of this country, there is apartheid. Government policy, written or unwritten, in many instances unwritten, prevent people of a certain ethnicity from entering into certain sector, from conducting certain kinds of business, from benefiting from certain kinds of services. Right? The call is saying, look, there's a Fort Wellington hospital, but just next door, a stone's throw away, we're talking about constructing another. That's a reality. I pointed out to you guys the other day where I went to the BUXTONIAN Health Center, and according to the dental practitioners there, the instructions they received from the regional health officer was not to do cleaning because of the pandemic. And they didn't have the necessary suction equipment and so on. But a stone's throw away and more polyclinic. You just walk in and you could have gotten your teeth cleaned. And a lot more dental services. So yes, I understand why a lot of these hospitals are going to be built in Indo-Guyanese communities, despite that you might have current public facilities, health facilities nearby. The simple reason is the people is taking quality service directly to their supporters. It's as simple as that. Apart from that, construction is big business. The more money the government spends on construction and on infrastructure work, the more kickbacks ministers and permanent secretaries and government operatives get. So that's why more construction has to take place. That is why hospitals will be built close to each other. Sometimes they might overrun each other, who knows? Right? But this government is about facilitating projects that will ensure they get the cream off the Guyanese people's money. So don't ask why they're building more hospitals when hospitals are right there and they should really use that money to invest in perhaps expanding the services of those hospitals and certainly improving service delivery. This is about all that glitters is not gold. What they're investing in now is a lot of glitter products. So we can see the transformation of the country, a lot of high rises, etc. Shiny things, distractions, while your money gets siphoned off to Dubai and so on. 6205933 is the number. We have about 6 minutes to program time. I think I saw a voice note or two. Here is one.
Sadaki, good morning. I live in Barbados, and I notice a certain social media, well, I don't know what I call it. Anyway, a certain person that is be on Facebook making himself that thing with the 2 long ears all the time. Because he's not worth me calling his name. His name is not worth it. I see he bouncing around Barbados here. He go one place and see the people planting onions. I think it must be 4 acres of onions. And y'all excited on the spot. They making arrangement, asking the people what they need, what the government got to do for them. Because when he go back, he go and attack to the Ministry of Agriculture. Because they got to get these people to come back to plant, and how he planning to close the gap with the import of onions. I want to know, that's how the government of Guyana running now. You just get social media commentator, fly out of the country, go somewhere, talk to a couple people and go back and advise the minister. That is what we really turn to in Guyana. He driving tourism, right? So all of the fancy area them, you can't expect a pretty city and a clean city if they don't pay the guy, the businessmen in our region street are getting all the big profits and that kind of thing. If they don't come out and pay the taxes, the city can't run. And if the government keeps stifling the mayor, that giving him the resources to look after the city, how the hell the city gonna be a garden city? And it's just chalk and cheese, because when Apnu was in there, Apnu never used to go over them like a big brother over a little brother. Apnu used to allow the mayor to do a job, so the city was better. But now they want to take everything, every idea they take up and jump on it. Oh, the president do this and the president do that, because all they're looking for is glory. But the difference, I don't know, they're so like Mia Motley. Why they don't take something from what Mia Motley do? Mia Motley, search wherever you like, do whatever you like, whatever she's doing, it benefits her country. It benefits the citizen of the country. Why them don't take that particular page out to Mia Motley book? But no, it wouldn't suit them. Because you know what? The poor people gonna get for start, live a little better life, and that's not how they want it. Poor people must always be at the foot. At the foot, begging and collecting a little hamper here, a little $1,000 here, and a little $1,500 here. Look, Kodaki, I'm so upset this morning. He got to swear. He there talking as if Guyana, yes, Guyana got the issues, but Guyana is not the worst country in the world. Guyana is not the worst country. He talking about the minibuses. He ain't get on the right minivan in Barbados here yet. He ain't get on the right one. He should have been come here when school open, and then he would talk different.
Thank you, caller. A lot of people leave these shows and they go to other people's countries and small islands and so on, and they talk a lot of crap. You know why? They are not even aware of what is happening in their country. You go in and marvel in another man's small island because they're producing onion? Huh? You ask that same individual what quote-unquote imported crops are being produced in this country, they can't tell you. Ghana has a whole vast lot of stuff that are being produced in this country that ordinarily people don't know. Ghana produces broccoli, Ghana produces grape. You all know that? Right? There's at least one family in this country that produces grapes. In the interior, they produce what we commonly call Irish potato. Good? Non-traditional crops. And if this chap should do his research, he will find out that what he is fascinated about has been happening in Guyana for quite a while now. Call it live, good morning.
Hi, good morning. About the Lycan story. I saw recently on the Bench Cup show that the proprietor, Lycan Funeral Parlor, she was saying that this year Lycan will be 100 years old, and thus it might very well be the oldest family-owned business in possibly the Caribbean. And PPP trying to run these people into the ground after so many years. Now, if my memory serves me right, I think the quarry that BK acquired back in under PPP was owned by a black guy. I'm trying to remember his name, but when this guy had the quarry running and operational, PPP refused to buy stones to do the roads in Guyana. They opt to bring in a reddish inferior stone from Trinidad by barge, which probably costs more. And they left the guy business to run down. I think BK ended up buying the place over from the guy. These are these people doing from the inception, putting black people with businesses under pressure. And the ones that we still understand in form, they're trying the best now to kill the last set of black people head off in here now. Real pitiful. That's hate. There's hate. I can see there's hate. Thank you.
Thank you. As the callers again struck the nail on the head. We have a lot of records, if I can call it that, a lot of experiences of black people investing in big businesses, and because of government policies, those businesses went under. Right? I always argue that Globe Trust and investment, for example, yes, poor management was at play, but Globe Trust could have been saved. But Jack Dio didn't want a black-owned bank or financial institution. But instead they opted to import stone, or risking bankruptcy, they had to sell and run. That and maintaining government policy. And it doesn't have to be the PPP policy alone, because the fact is, I think the APNU dropped the ball in some instances, because they had opportunities to, if you want to say fast track, or aid people's application for them to get businesses started, and they dragged their feet on it. Right now, the CEO of Guyana Airways Corporation, a guy who used to run a program on KAMS platform, Dr. Adams, I think his name was, has put up that business for sale, because the PPP, neither the APNU, has really helped him to get it off ground with the necessary permits and concessions, etc. So the deck is always stacked against black people. And don't let us run from that. But in an oil economy that is expected to expand by almost 50%, you're going to see much more disparity between black and other ethnicities in this country. The black are definitely, unless drastic actions are taken, going to be left way behind while other sections of this society move forward. Those who see that as racist on my part, thank you for the accolade. It is now 5 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour, and this is where I must take my leave of you. I do have a pleasant rest of the day. That young lady who is asking for assistance because her house has fallen down, or home has fallen down, whatever, you can call me and let me talk with you and see. I don't know what help I can offer. I don't know what help we here on this platform can offer, because that might be a big ticket project. But I might be able to point you to a government agency, Ministry of Social Services for sure, because children are involved there. And let's see what help they can. Got you. Have a great day. Goodbye. See you tomorrow for Bacchanal time. We're going to be on 6 tomorrow evening, 18 hours, for KAMS Saturday Rhythms. So y'all bring out the wines, put on your tight pants, your hot pants, and so on, and your midriff, and your bell bottom and thing, and Come, let's have a grand party. Those of you who would like to come on down to Kidam's place, come right down and let's have fun.